With that, Aaron, why don't you introduce our guest, Dr. Gabor Maté?
Well, Gabor Maté is a retired physician and an author, and also a survivor of another genocide, the Nazi Holocaust. And we wanted to bring him in just briefly to share his thoughts on what's going on in Gaza. Welcome, Dad.
Welcome.
Hi, how you guys? It's one of those situations where somebody who deals with trauma in my work and who speaks so much, and words really are my métier, the words fail me at this point. It's difficult to explain how I perceive the situation, but in a certain deep sense, I feel that it's the worst thing I've seen in my whole life. And it's impossible to compare atrocities. I mean, nothing compares with the mechanized murder of 5-6 million Jews by the Nazis. What can compare to the slaughter of 3 million Vietnamese civilians by the Americans? The many murders and mass killings that are not even reported in the Western press, such as the Indonesian genocide in East Timor, such as the killing of 100,000 Guatemalan indigenous people in the 1990s by the American and the Israeli trained brutal military in that country. One could go on. But what is different about this is that I've never seen anything so publicly committed, such atrocities perpetrated on television, and the victims are presented as the perpetrators. And either this spectacle, this obscene, vicious spectacle that we're subjected to, is either supported or condoned by the major media and all the politicians. Now, it's obligatory, and I think it's even necessary to say, this is my point of view, is that what happened on October 7th wasn't justifiable, that the killings of civilians, whatever details may yet emerge about intentions or what actually happened, that's not something that should have happened. That was something horrible, and it was an atrocity. But even the need to say that comes out of a culture in which the atrocities of the other side are never called out. No Israeli spokesman, when they talk about their policies, ever asked, do you condemn the pogrom at Hawara in the West Bank earlier this year? Do you condemn the killings of Palestinian children by settlers? Do you condemn the regular attacks by the settlers? Do you understand that the former deputy chief of staff of the Israeli army said that the situation of the Palestinians in the West Bank reminds him of the situation of Jews in Germany? Is this even reported in the Western press? And what he meant by is that the settlers, like the Nazi hooligans, are free to attack the Palestinians as the Nazis, thugs, the brown shirts were free to attack Jews, and the army and the police not only stood by, they aided and abetted them. Is the Western public made aware of the thousands of Jewish Israeli rabbis and historians and intellectuals who recently signed a document calling the present situation clearly apartheid? Are you aware that the former head of Mossad has said that the situation of the Palestinians under the occupation is apartheid? And so when anybody is asked to speak about perpetrations on the Palestinian side, they're immediately asked to condemn and to denounce and to reject. And yet the daily suffering, crucifixion of the Palestinian people, and including and especially the people in Gaza, nobody's ever called to task. Nobody's ever questioned. And these smooth-faced liars in the Israeli army who would give lessons to Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, who are masters of propaganda, like Goebbels never was. They're allowed to get away with it. Now, I'm speaking emotionally now. It's not helpful sometimes to speak emotionally because people get repelled by the anger or by the outrage that one generates. I understand the grief on both sides. I understand the sorrow. I've had communication from Israeli friends who are actually sympathetic to the Palestinian side, who are just in fear, who are full of thoughts of revenge. I get that. I understand it. But surely in this situation, whoever you are, whichever your side you're on, you got to get past your feelings. You can understand your feelings, you can accept them, but you owe, if you want truth, and if you want peace, and if you want justice, you can't just go by feelings that are conditioned by decades of propaganda, decades of weaponizing the suffering of Jews as a baton with which to beat the Palestinians. You got to get past that. And you have to actually ask yourself, do I really know what's going on? Have I stood 1 second even in my mind in the shoes of the other? Have I tried to understand what's happening to those people? If they committed certain acts that are hateful, what drove them to that hate? Did the Palestinians come to Europe to attack Jews? Or did something happen in their land that made them so desperate? And finally, I'll only say that what happened there is not a secret. It's been documented. It's been written up by Israeli historians. I could name 5 of them right off the bat. Tom Segev, Simha Flapan, Ilan Pape, many others by Israeli journalists. None of this is even vaguely controversial from the historical point of view. And the fact that we live in such a bubble, and this bubble is created by the same Western press that brought us the Iraq war and the weapons of mass destruction, and yes, the Kuwaiti incubator children, leading to the death of 500,000 Iraqi civilians. The same Western press that brought us the Vietnam War. When Martin Luther King spoke out against the Vietnam War, do you remember what the New York Times said? New York Times said, this time he crossed over the line. It's that same press. You might want to ask yourself, why are there so either passive or enthusiastic cheerleaders for this genocide? Are you really going to trust them? Are you going to try and find out for yourself? So yes, I'm speaking with a lot of emotion now. I did give it into you, an extensive one, a longer one, not so emotionally laden as these words have been now. But in light of the latest news from Gaza, with apparently the cell phones, the internet being cut off, and the bombings being escalated, you know what? I'm upset. I'm really upset. I have a lot of feelings of pain. I know what happened to my own people. Nothing that happened to us in any way justifies what's going on right now. I'll stop there.
Gabor, well, we should definitely do a more extensive interview with you, examining the psyche of Zionism in this current era, in this current phase, and possibly even the psyche of a population like that in Gaza Strip, which has been totally betrayed by the world and has taken on the role of one of history's greatest, most tormented victims, but which also is determined to resist with arms. But I want to get you now, before you go, to just respond to one thing. I just want to get your response to some comments Benjamin Netanyahu made before escalating the assault on Gaza. Sorry, and we lost volume there, so I started over.
People of the light, they are the people of darkness, and light shall triumph over darkness.
Let's hear that
People
again.
of the light, they are the people of darkness, and light shall triumph over darkness. Citizens of Israel, October 7th was a very dark and black day in our history. We will fully investigate what had happened at our southern border, the border with Gaza. Everybody will have to provide answers, myself included, but all that will happen only after the war. As a prime minister, I'm responsible for guaranteeing the future of this country, and now my role is to lead all Israelis, the state of Israel and the people of Israel, to an overpowering victory. It is now a time to come together for one purpose, to storm ahead to achieve victory. With joint forces and a profound belief in our justness, a profound belief in the eternity of the Jewish people, we shall realize the prophecy of Isaiah. There will no longer be stealing at your borders, and your gates will be of glory. Together we will fight. Together we will win. People of the
So he starts off by referring to people of the light versus people of the darkness.
I'm happy to respond. I completely agree with Netanyahu. The light will triumph over the darkness. He's just a bit confused as to what represents light and darkness. He's one of the darkest minds on the world stage right now. He dares quote prophecy. I'll give him prophecy. It says in the Tanakh, "Thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, you who yourself strangers in Egypt." And what Netanyahu has devoted his career to is oppressing the other. And he dares prattle on about light. What we're witnessing there, and you know, with Netanyahu, it's like with many other politicians, turn off the sound. Just listen to their body language. What you're seeing there is a person so alienated from his humanity, so committed to his ego, that, as they say in Hungarian, whatever he says, not even the opposite is true. It's so false, not even the opposite is true. And yeah, Bibi, the light will triumph, despite whatever you can do. And you have a lot of power to impose a lot of suffering, and you will, because that's your nature. That's what you committed to.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gabor Maté. I know you have to go, but I would love to see a more in-depth interview between you and Aaron along the lines of the one you did on Russiagate. Love to have you back, Aaron. I don't know if there's anything you want to.
No. Thank you, Dad, so much for joining us.
Yeah, and I'm happy to come back to talk about the psychological underpinnings of these events, for sure. Thank you both. Take care.
All right. Take care, Gabor. So that was the prophetic voice right there of Dr. Gabor Maté. I think a much needed intervention today. It's very interesting to note Benjamin Netanyahu's language in the context of classically fascist rhetoric, but also as a preview of what was to take place. If something appears that's significant in a Netanyahu wartime speech, it's for a reason. He's not just speaking off the cuff. He was signaling that he was going to cut off the light, all light and communications to Gaza, in my view. And now if you actually look at a satellite image, like a Maxar satellite of Gaza versus Israel, they are the people with light.